Perseverance is the word of the day, maybe even the word of the week, perhaps even the year. And we're going to tie it to the news today. Hope you're off to a great start to your week this Monday morning. We have a bunch of news to get through, but I don't want to start off without mentioning what happened over the weekend. We marked a really important historical occasion that I believe provides some context. And I've been replaying this lyric in my head from Hamilton the musical, which is, "Look around, how lucky are we to be alive right now? History is being made." And I was replaying the lyrics of the musical because, of course, we marked the death of Alexander Hamilton over the weekend. And here's why I think it provides some context for us. Truly a tragic event, one in American history that we have remembered for years. But it's easy to forget in that historic event that it was the sitting vice president of the United States of America who murdered another man. And despite that, continued to serve out his term and was never convicted of that crime. That man, of course, is Aaron Burr. And so it provides some context because I know it feels chaotic right now. And I know it feels crazy. And I was listening to the news last night and I was getting anxious. And I went back to this lyric because it always has sat with me and resonated with me. We are living through historic times. We cannot forget that even in the news coverage. We are lucky to be alive right now and we're witnessing history. It's really being made. And that's an incredible opportunity, although I know extremely challenging. So I just wanted to share that perspective. That, again, we marked over the weekend. We have some more information on our website if you'd like to read more about that. In the meantime, let's talk a little bit about the news that is swirling in the headlines that can be anxiety-inducing. And I want to talk a little bit about COVID-19 and cases specifically in America. We are continuing to see infections rise. We're seeing, according to one statistic, about 39 states experience this rise. This is very important because a lot of the states in the news are constantly being mentioned are southern states. But please know, this is a widespread of increasing of cases. And it's important that we recognize that so we learn from that. In fact, the New York Times today really wanted to pay attention to Minnesota and rising infection rates in the Midwest. So we need to know this is a widespread rising of infections. At the same time, Florida, we're seeing something very specific. Over the weekend, in one day, single day, we saw 15,000 plus new cases in Florida. We haven't seen any numbers like that before. Yes, we are testing more. We are testing more than in the spring in a place like New York. But it is important to know that. In the meantime, I want to just take you to the data that the CDC is actually looking at. And there was a report that was released on Friday looking at mortality, but only looking at mortality until May. And again, looking at the traits of serious cases of COVID. And one of the good things you should know about this research is that it's consistent. So we're not seeing suddenly new information that's taking us down a different path. We are seeing that the more serious cases are in older Americans and that pre-existing conditions are really a determinant as well for those that eventually pass away from COVID-19. That said, the CDC took the percentage of people that died and broke out a subset and looked at a particular subset of about 10,000 people. And when they did that, they saw in that subset that it was actually younger Americans that were disproportionately affected. So under 65 and also specifically in minority communities. I want to show you what this looks like because I have a nice little chart for you if you don't mind. This is what I'm looking at, CDC data, right next to the Legos in my office. So here again, this is just the subset. This is not everybody in America, but the subset that they pulled out. And this is under 65. So you can see here the larger percentage in Hispanic and Latinos, non-whites, whites. But here's the other thing. This bar over here is unknown. Remember, we often don't have complete information on all cases of COVID-19. And it's this part that I think is important to also just recognize because as we're going through statistics, they're incomplete. Again, you can see these are different age groups broken down by race only in this subset. As you get older, this is white, Hispanic, and non-Hispanic here. So it does change as you get older, but this is just a little bit of a look. It just, again, is a reminder that we're continuing to look at which populations are most affected by COVID-19, and older, pre-existing conditions is a major factor, but we're also keeping an eye on disproportionate numbers in minority communities. And there's several different reasons as to why that is. I think we should let the data continue to develop to see if we learn anything more, especially as we know this data only gets us through mid-May and we're almost 2 months from that. So we'll talk more about that. That continues to be a trend. In the meantime, a lot of you have asked about masks and research regarding masks. interesting enough, in the New England Journal of Medicine, there was a study that was published on masking up. And the researchers in this study made a reference that really outside of the healthcare facility, masks don't have a huge impact. That was in their study. Well, they actually issued a clarification because their study was being used by some that wanted to say, well, masks don't really do anything, we should be wearing masks. And what they wanted to clarify is that what they've learned is that it's the duration of time that you spend with someone infected in an enclosed space that raises your risk for COVID-19. So yes, passing someone randomly on the street that doesn't have an infection, wearing a mask may not be that effective. But if someone is infected and you're standing next to them, for example, in the grocery store, they want to be clear that they do think that masks can actually change the trajectory of the disease. That said, guys, really important, whether you are a huge proponent or masks or an opponent or somewhere in the middle, one of the things that the research is really struggling with is measuring compliance. Are we complying? So they can look at mask orders, but they can't really look at compliance. And so we should recognize that. A little good news on the COVID front. New York, for the first time in months, had 0 COVID-related deaths. And this mirrors some other reporting I've done speaking to a doctor in Connecticut. I've interviewed him before, Dr. Michael Perry. You can see that on our website, who said, they went from a big burst of COVID cases to now really manageable amounts. So that's promising to know that you can come up and come down the other side. The other thing that I want to mention in the studies regarding mortality rates is that even in the last 2 months, one of the things we continue to hear from doctors is that they've learned to treat COVID better, that they have a better understanding. It's not perfect yet, but it's better than it was at the beginning of this outbreak. The president made a lot of big news this weekend wearing masks. Did you guys see that? He had a mask on with the presidential seal. He walked into Walter Reed, made big news. I'm just mentioning it because it's been a big debate. I think you should know that he did it. There's some different opinions on that. The president actually made news for other reasons, specific to commuting the sentence of Roger Stone, a friend of his. Roger Stone was at the center of a case that was sort of a spin-off of the Mueller investigation. He was convicted of a crime. He was headed to prison. The president, late on Friday, commuted his sentence. So what does that mean? Commuting your sentence for a federal crime is something that the president can do. That means the president can shorten your sentence. It's not the same as a pardon, where in a pardon you can shorten your sentence and then you get your civil rights back. You're able to vote. It's a little bit different than a commutation. So Roger Stone is not going to prison. There's debate about this. What you should know is that this is a very specific presidential power that presidents have when it relates to federal crimes. And presidents can do it and offer almost no explanation. They can just do it. Any president. So that's what we know. That's what we know of the case right now. In the meantime, to politics, it is important to note this week. Why is this week important? Well, we're not really sure what's to come, but over the weekend we marked another historical date, which was the first time that we saw, back in the 1980s, a presidential candidate nominate a woman vice president. We saw that again with Senator John McCain nominating Sarah Palin, and Vice President Joe Biden has said he's going to nominate a female vice president candidate. We don't know when that's going to happen. But in the past, this has been kind of a hot time for that. So we're going to be watching to see if we get a name from the Biden camp about what is the vice presidential candidate, who is it, what does it look like, and whether or not that changes some of the move towards the election, which is actually happening in a couple months. I know, we have a lot to do. Okay, here's why perseverance is your word of the day. There's been a big race to Mars. In fact, 3 different countries, China, United Arab Emirates, and the United States, are sending unmanned aircraft rovers to Mars. Ours is a 6-wheeled rover car called Perseverance. And so it's going to arrive next spring. And what are we looking for? We're looking to collect rocks and investigate, was there life on Mars? Is there life on Mars? I mean, it's been a crazy year already. Let's see what we find out. But the name of our rover is Perseverance. I'm going to leave you with that today. Questions, comments, let me know. As always, you can email us, hello@smarternews.com. Would love to hear what you're thinking about the news and what else we can do for you to help. All right, guys, have a great week. I'll talk to you soon.